Over the next 30 days, you guys are going to learn 30 different principles that I have learned and used over the last 6 years in order to grow my business from 0 to over 3 million in profit. Okay. That's profit, not just revenue. And so, one of the biggest questions that I get asked all the time is, Laurel, you've been literally doing the same strategy for over 6 years. How has your strategy been sustainable? Well, it's because it's built upon principles, right? And so my strategy has outlasted all of the different tactics that a lot of people have been pushing over the last several years. And so that is the main reason why my business has had steady growth over 6 years. Now, it wasn't always like that, okay? And so over the next 30 days, you're gonna hear not only the good stuff that happened, but we're also gonna talk about some of the so-called bad stuff that happened. I hate to say bad because the bad actually led to a lot of good things happening. And so what you're going to learn is how you can utilize almost any type of strategy if you understand the principles behind them. And I think that's why my students get the best results, even in this overcrowded marketing space, is because they're starting to understand the principles behind why my strategy works so much. And so today, day one, I thought it would be the best principle to start with, and that is called engaging the field. Now, this is something that I learned from Dr. Jeff Spencer. Now, if you haven't heard of Dr. Jeff Spencer, you have heard of some of his clients other than me, but they include Bono and The Edge from the band U2. You have probably heard of a little name called Lance Armstrong, Tiger Woods. There's so many amazing people. My own mentor, Nick Peterson. And so Dr. Jeff Spencer and Nick Peterson both showed me this one principle that we're going to be talking about today that is called engaging the field. Now, a lot of my students know the term engaging the field because I always tell them, hey, just go and engage the field, meaning go and get your own data. But there is a lot more to this principle, including 3 rules that you should never break when it comes to learning something new, especially if you are someone who's enrolled in a coaching program, maybe a course. Today's lesson is going to be super valuable to you because in one of the rules, I'm actually going to show you how I have actually been able to overcome a lot of imposter syndrome. So many of you guys talk about, well, I've got imposter syndrome. And so I'm actually going to talk you guys through how one of the rules behind engaging the field has helped me overcome so much of that imposter syndrome, okay? So what is engaging the field? Let's actually talk about that first, okay? Engaging the field means that you are not just gonna stand on the sidelines and ask questions like, what if? Engaging the field means you're gonna go out, you're gonna take action, and you're gonna go and you're gonna get your own data. Now, in the process of actually going out and engaging the field, so many people break 3 rules, okay? So there are 3 rules behind the principle of engaging the field. Now, here's the thing. I myself have been guilty of breaking these 3 rules at one point or another inside my business. And so as we go through the 3 rules, I'm going to be sharing some direct examples because by the end of this video, I want you to go out and be able to actually start practicing this main principle, because this principle right here, and this is why we're doing this on day one, has been the pivotal principle behind my success over the last several years, okay? So what are the 3 rules when it comes to engaging the field? Well, rule number 1 is don't be dull, okay? Now, rule number 2 is don't be distracted. And rule number 3 is don't be delusional. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example of each because one of the things that you are going to realize is that you're breaking one of these rules and it's actually holding you back. Now, because I've said dull, distracted, delusional, right now you're probably like, Laurel, I already know what those mean, but I'm actually going to walk you guys through how learning those 3 rules has been able to allow me to make leaps and bounds in my business, while a lot of people, even the people that started at the same time as me, a lot of them are still stuck in the same place that they were even 6 years ago. So let's take and break down rule number 1, okay? Don't be dull, okay? So if you ever hear me inside my $7 a month coaching program tell a student don't be dull, I want them to understand that being dull means a couple of things, okay? Let me give you an example of being dull. Have you ever been on a coaching call and there's just this one person that is just taking up the most time because they haven't taken the time to actually go through the material? So they're asking questions that are completely out of context. I'll give you an example. So just this past week, I did a content accelerator workshop. And inside the chat, as I'm actually talking about organic content, someone in the chat is blowing it up, asking questions about KPIs for the ads that they're currently running. That person is being dull because they are disrupting the entire training because they're not asking the question in the appropriate place. Okay. Now, another example of being dull is when people come inside the Facebook group and they're like, well, I'm a fitness coach. Any other fitness coaches here? What KPIs are you tracking? Okay. Or what if I launch a power content video? What will happen? Well, we don't know. That's the thing. You're being dull because if you apply Engage the Field, you need to go out and get your own data. I'll give you an example. So I have two fitness clients who are both in the same niche. They both target stay-at-home moms, both very similar. Their ads are very similar, but their audiences actually react differently, right? Because here's the thing. Some of you guys resonate with me because you like the type of person I am. Maybe you like that I show up authentically. You like that I don't wear a lot of makeup and have the fancy clothes and everything like this. Maybe you resonate with me because I don't want to scale my business to millions of dollars a year because I love being a solopreneur. There are reasons that people will resonate with you more so than anyone else. And so by simply asking the question, are there any other fitness coaches or health coaches? And this applies across the board. You cannot base your expectations on someone else's data. You have to actually go out and get it. And so that is rule number one, is don't be dull. Go and do the work, bring us back the data, and then we could actually help you fix it, right? And so we have a very strict framework inside my $7 program. And it's something like this, okay? So anytime someone is asking for support, they first, one, must list the resource. Hey, this is the resource that I am talking about. Two, here's what I did. Here's how I did it. And three, here's what happened. And it's either going to be a share of success or it's going to be a share that, hey, I need help. This is what happened. That is the proper way to get help in any type of coaching program. You ever heard of someone who's like, well, I was in this coaching program or I was in this coaching program and it didn't work for me? It was because they didn't apply the rules of engaging the field. They probably just made a whole bunch of assumptions based off of something someone else said, or they were just too scared to go out and get their own data. And for those of you guys who know me, I operate on a very low ad budget. And so engaging the field is a very important rule that we stick with inside my $7 program. And it has allowed more people to get off their ass and actually go out and get their data, because the faster you can get your data, the faster we could actually help you move forward, okay? I'm gonna give you guys an example of this, okay? So one of my Lean on Laurel students, when he first came to me, he literally was starting not from scratch. I hate to say he was starting from scratch because he wasn't. He was one of Seth Godin's coaches. And so he had a lot of experience coaching people. But he had just launched his business, and even better, his son had just had a baby. And the son and his wife were actually looking for a babysitter. And so whenever this actually came up, my client was like, you know what? I want to be the babysitter. I want to spend time with my new grandson. And so he's like, if I can get my own consulting business off the ground, hell, I've been doing it years for someone else. Can I get my consulting business off the ground? And so he came and worked with me. And over 90 days, he was engaging the field, meaning he was putting out content, he was having conversations with his ideal client, and then over 90 days, we were able to compile data, okay? By the end of the 90 days, he had actually sold a couple of his consulting programs, but it wasn't enough to be able to sustain. But here's where the magic happens. And I like to call this magic math as a result of this. And so think about this. After 90 days, he brought me, I did this many posts. These posts got these many comments. These comments led to this many messenger conversations. These messenger conversations led to this many calls. And then this many calls led to these many sales. Now, as he was presenting the numbers, what I noticed was he was only closing 8% of the people that he was getting over the phone. Now, if we troubleshoot our way through this, right, we can look at the data and say, well, if we push more volume, meaning we can make more posts to get more comments, to get more messenger conversations, to get twice as many phone calls to close 8%, right? That'll double his sales. But is there a more efficient way? Well, yes. If we spent 90 days just focusing on his sales call closing, he could see a leap and bound in his business without having to change any other thing. And so that is data, right? Math is there. You cannot refute math. And so we saw two opportunities. One, we could push more volume, or two, we could focus on helping him close more phone calls. And that's what we did over the next 90 days. He didn't have to change any other thing about his marketing, but we made sure that he was improving his close rate. And so that is how we can use engaging the field in a way to make leaps and bounds in our business. You have to do the math, but you can only do the math if you go out and get your own data. This client was not dull. He went out, got the data, and then every single week brought it to me. And then after 90 days, we had enough data to be able to fix the problem. And so he was not dull. Okay. Now, rule number 2, don't be distracted. Now, this is a very common one. How many of you guys are in multiple programs? I get it. You know, I take multiple courses at a time, and I have to really tell myself, okay, Laurel, what the hell are you doing right now? And so don't be distracted means don't try to do multiple things at one time. I have a student I literally just had this conversation with because he's taken my program and he's taking someone else's program and he's starting to get very overwhelmed, and they have a little bit of conflicting tactics in there. And so I'm like, don't be distracted. Like, whether you choose mine or choose someone else's, that is okay. But you have to choose one and you have to be consistent. You have to go and engage the field and get your data, right? Another way that you could be breaking this rule is, are you pivoting every other day? You're trying a tactic for 7 days, then you see someone else's Facebook ad for a $27 product and you're like, I'm going to go try that. And then you're going to try this. And you're coming, like, a lot of students come to me and they're like, well, so-and-so says I should be doing this. Do you think? I'm like, you're here for a reason, right? You're inside my program to follow a specific framework, okay? And so one of the things that you have to remember is that every program works to a certain extent. Like, even me, whenever I buy quote sucky programs, I still get something out of it because I'm not being dull and I'm not being distracted. Okay. A lot of times you guys are just way too distracted and you can't decide that I'm going to do this one thing for 90 days. You're trying something every 2 weeks. And so those are the people that are distracted. We get a lot of them that come into my coaching calls. They don't bother, again, going over anything, and they're so distracted by what everyone else is saying inside the comments. It's like, we need to slow down and we need to not be distracted, okay? Now, what is rule number 3? This one is a huge one, and I'm warning you, some of you guys are going to be triggered by what I'm about to say, but I think it's going to help you understand how I was able to actually overcome imposter syndrome over the last several years. Because here's the thing, I get it from time to time, and I always come back to this one rule, okay? Don't be delusional, okay? Some of you guys, and I want you to hear me out, okay? Don't be triggered, just hear me out. A lot of you guys are faking your expertise. And I'm gonna go take a little step back and say, you've got some expertise, but you're embellishing the results that you can actually get at this moment in time, okay? Now, this is where imposter syndrome starts to really creep in, okay? Imposter syndrome is based upon some type of belief that you have within yourself. And again, remember, I am being very transparent here. There have been moments of time where I have been guilty of breaking each of these rules, including this one. And so anytime that I feel imposter syndrome creeping in, I'm like, Laurel, are you going a little bit too ahead of yourself? And then I go back and I get more data and I'm like, okay, now let me explain what I just said. Okay. Let's actually back up. Whenever I first launched this particular business in April of 2018, I launched it on one simple tactic. It was a $5 video ad. Okay. At the time that I launched my business, I didn't know what a webinar was. I didn't know what I didn't even know what a sales funnel was. Okay. I worked in television. I started working in television in 2002. I had no idea what internet marketing was or anything like that. And so I was very naive whenever I first came into this space. But I came into this space with a $5 video ad. Okay. Here's the thing. I had been executing that video ad since 2008. Whenever I worked for CBS, I was running their ads. I started a lot of their social media. And so I had been doing these video ads for several years, right? Over 10 by the time that I was teaching this, okay? I was actively doing it at the TV station because here's the thing, I didn't quit my job until several months later. I started in April 2018. I was able to quit my job. In November of 2018, I gave them a month notice. And then by the January of 2019, I was on my own on my business. So I tell you guys this story because a lot of you guys think that you have to have all of these strategies and all of these tactics, right? I literally booked out my first agency service by doing a simple $5 ad. And what I did was I went out, I didn't just sit behind the computer screen, right? A lot of you guys are just stuck behind the computer screen. I went out and I didn't know it at the time, but I was engaging the field. I knew that I had this one $5 tactic that we could use in order to get more eyeballs, right? Over the course of my years over at CBS, over the course of my years at Scripps, I had gotten 70 million views on my stuff. And so I knew that a simple $5 video ad can get millions and millions of views in a very short period of time. That was the one tactic. And so I went to local businesses. I'm like, dude, instead of spending tens of thousands of dollars on a billboard, what if you just spent $500 on this video ad? You would actually get more targeted people. And I kept going to different businesses and doing this while also teaching the strategy here online. Okay. Now, did I have imposter syndrome in the very beginning? Hell yeah, because I didn't know anything about the online space. I'm like, am I actually qualified? Because I had been a 9-to-5er, not necessarily a 9-to-5er, because in television, you don't really have a 9-to-5, but I had a full-time job. And I'm like, God, people are paying me an insane amount of money to do this. And I almost felt guilty because my salary at the TV station, I'm like, man, I am making 3 times the amount of money with this video ad thing on Facebook. And, you know, I'm like, God, like it feels weird, right? Especially coming from someone who's working full time. And so the more that I really engaged the field and got results for clients who are using this tactic, I was able to eliminate that imposter syndrome. Now, I told you guys that story because a lot of you guys right now, you might have to just go back and say, okay, what is the one tactic? What is the one strategy that I 100% know that I could execute for clients? Because a lot of you guys are marketing with strategies that you haven't proven yet. And so if you just take one step back and remember my story, everything started with a simple $5 video ad. Then as I was going and engaging the field and doing more Facebook Lives, I was getting more people asking me, will this work for me? I would tell them, I don't know, let's test it and document the process. And that is how I first learned about webinars. Someone came to me and said, hey, can this $5 video ad help me get more webinar views? Can we get more clients? And I was like, I don't know, but let's test it and document it. And so that has been like my entire process all of this time has been, let's test and document. And so anytime that you feel that imposter syndrome is creeping in, ask yourself the question, am I being delusional right now? Am I trying to teach something that I myself haven't done before? Am I trying to sell results that I haven't gotten before, right? And I know, like I said, a lot of you guys are probably a little triggered by this conversation, but it's one that has to happen because if you are going to move forward And if you want to start eliminating some of that imposter syndrome that's going on, just simply ask yourself, and this is not something you have to say publicly, but a lot of times whenever I feel it creeping in, I ask myself, I'm like, okay, am I being 100% true to what type of result can I actually get for this person? I mean, I've been guilty of it. Like, I have looked at data a little bit too fast and overpromised. That's just part of the gig, right? But we always make sure that we make do on that kind of stuff. And so a lot of times I'm like, am I being delusional in thinking this, right? And so those are the 3 rules of engaging the field. So let's just kind of recap, right? Engaging the field means you have to go out, get your own data, but while you're getting the data, do not break these 3 rules. 1, don't be dull. 2, don't be distracted. And 3, don't be delusional.